X-Sabers is seen as one of the most underpowered decks in Edison format. It has some of the most powerful cards, such as Fall Troll being a 2400 monster reborn on legs, Gotham's Emergency Call being a double Call of the Haunted, and Rescue Cat, which even had to be errataed to be able to come back from the ban list. X-Saber was just a month away from being one of the most powerful decks released, post The Shining Darkness. However, in Edison format, which is March 2010, just a month before the release of The Shining Darkness, X-Saber is very slept upon. But I came up with a tech card that aims to replicate the effect that Bogart Knight and Dark Soul had on the X-Saber deck. Let me show you what I mean. Let's put X-Sabers back on the map. To start the profile off, I play 3 copies of Fall Troll. This guy allows you to do powerful synchro summoning by bringing back an X-Saber monster, and pairing it with Gotham's Emergency Call, bringing back 2, allows you to make multiple synchros and easily overwhelm your opponent. For the other X-Sabers, I play 3 copies of Emmer's Blade, the recruiter for X-Sabers. Emmer's Blade, similar to Fall Troll, is very good with Emergency Call. By crashing him repeatedly into your opponent's monsters, you can bring out different X-Saber monsters and then bring them all back with Emergency Call. For the tuners, I play 3 copies of Airbolem. Airbolem's hand rip effect is very prevalent against the Frog deck, seeing as they usually go Swap Frog, send Treeborn turn 1, and then pass with an open field. Well, you can summon an Airbolem and then punish them by ripping away their monarchs in their hand. Next, I play 2 copies of X-Saber Full Held Knight. Full Held Knight has a very interesting effect in Edison format. Unlike Shura the Blue Flame, Full Held Knight does not need to send a monster to the graveyard, so he can attack over a token and then bring back an X-Saber from the graveyard. You can also attack into face down Rykos. Even if they pop the Full Held Knight, you still get to bring back a monster from the graveyard. And for the final X-Saber name in the main deck, 1 copy of Ragigura. An important tool to recur back your resources from the graveyard and allows for different level synchro plays. Next, I play a Gravekeeper package of 3 copies of Gravekeeper Spy and 1 copy of Descendant. Seeing as there's no Pashul, Bogart Knight or Dark Soul in Edison format, I wanted a different card to raise my ceiling, and I believe Gravekeeper Spy is perfect at doing that. By flipping up a face down Gravekeeper Spy, or your opponent attacking into it, you can summon Descendant, which can tribute this away to pop one of their cards. This also gives you 2 level 4 spellcaster non-tuners to allow for synchro summoning with either of your tuner monsters into either Arcanite or Herbalium. A turn 1 Gravekeeper Spy paired with either of these 2 tuners can allow for 3 pops by summoning Descendant, tributing off the Spy to pop 1, and synchro summoning into Arcanite Magician, getting 2 counters and then popping 2 cards on the field. Spy raises the ceiling of your deck in a much better way than recruiters like Giant Rat does, because the issue with Giant Rat is if your opponent does not attack into it, it becomes a whole lot worse. So Giant Rat can tutor Rescue Cat from your deck and bring out 2 copies of Airbolem to allow for 2 hits directly and hand looping them for 2 cards. However, a skilled opponent will not attack into your face down recruiter, so you would need to crash your recruiter into their monster and then bringing out a cat in main phase 2 and tripping it off doesn't really accomplish anything. While a Spy, if they don't attack into Spy, you can flip it and summon Descendant on your own and be proactive with it. However, with Gravekeeper Spy, if they attack into this, you can summon Descendant from your deck, and it's a very high likelihood that it will survive the attack, seeing as it has 2000 defense points. And if they don't attack into it, you can still flip it up and get the effect. And then the aforementioned copy of Rescue Cat, probably the strongest normal summon in this deck, seeing as he immediately can summon 2 copies of Airbolem from your deck, and either attack directly for 32 and hand rip them for 2, or perform explosive synchro plays with Gravekeeper Spy or the rest of your X-Saber engine. To tutor the cats, or any of our key X-Saber names, I play 1 copy of Sangan. Sangan is also very good in this deck, seeing as it is a non-tuner, so you can easily synchro away with your tuners to make a 6-star and still get the effect of Sangan. And for the last monster, 1 copy of Cyber Valley. Seeing as I already play 1 for 1 to summon Ragigura from the deck and grab back an X-Saber, having an additional target that I can utilize turn 1 is very good. And as we've talked about before, it pairs very well with Brain Control and Mind Control, naturally being good in a synchro-centric deck. I'm only playing 1 copy though, because this deck already has a lot of normal summons, so you don't want to clog on too many cards that just are stuck in your hand. But having the 1 copy makes 1 for 1 a whole lot better, and I felt 1 was the perfect ratio. For the spell cards, I play 2 copies of Book of Moon. So Book of Moon is very good in this deck, seeing as you can put your opponent's monsters face down and kill them with Full Held Knight to bring back an X-Saber monster. Book of Moon also allows your Emmer's Blade to dodge cards like Dimensional Prison when you attack into their back row. You can even utilize Book of Moon to flip your Gravekeeper Spy face down and then flip it back up again to summon yet another Gravekeeper monster from your deck. 1 copy of Level Limit Area B. This card works very well in tandem with Fulham Knight, being able to put their guys in defense position and then attack over it to bring back an X-Saber monster. And if you ever need to clear it yourself, you can summon Chunlei and destroy it. 1 copy of 1/1, Brain Control and Mind Control, and 1 Heavy Storm. For the traps, 3 copies of Gotham's Emergency Call and 1 copy of Call to Haunted for the recursion traps. 2 copies of Legacy of Yaragarasu. Seeing as this is a trap deck, it's very important to be able to set multiple back rows on the first few turns to bait your opponent into using Heavy Storm while still trading 1/1 by drawing a card with a Legacy, but also forcing the opponent to play slower by respecting your back rows when you have multiple cards face down. 2 copies of Bottomless Trap Hole and 2 copies of Dimensional Prison. So the reason why I'm not playing 3 copies of this is because you have quite a lot of walls that your opponent will not attack into, either Gravekeeper Spy, your Recruiter in Emmer's Blade, and the Cyber Valley in Fulham Knight, which forces an attack usually, but usually you end up either banishing this to drawing a card or negating the attack with Fulham Knight. So they might not be as inclined to summon a monster and swing into you when you have these type of cards. So I felt the 3rd prison usually ended up clogging my hand a little too much. And with the Book of Moon and the general pace of this deck, it just made sense not to play the full playset. 1 compulsory evacuation device. Similar to Book of Moon, you can utilize this card to dodge Deep Prison when you attack with Emmer's Blade. Additionally, you can use Compulse to bounce away their monster so Airballoon can connect directly. An important play to think about is knowing the rulings of the battle phase. So on attack declaration, there's only 1 step. For example, when Dimensional Prison could be activated. So say you have an Airballoon on your side of the field, and your opponent has a monster that you want to attack into. If you want to play around cards like Dimensional Prison or Mirror Force, or even Battle Fader, it is better to utilize a card like Compulse in the battle step, which is after attack declaration but before damage step, to bounce away their monster to the hand, and then do a replay with the Airballoon. Because when you perform a replay, you're already in battle step, so these cards can no longer be activated. Torrential Mirror Force, powerful trap cards, and then the best card in Edison format, Trap Dust Shoot. For the extra deck, 1 copy of Armory Arm, 1 copy of Ally Justice Cataster, 2 copies of Hyunlei. In my testing, I noticed the second one came up a few times, so I decided to include it. This is a very powerful tool to either destroy your own floodgates to be able to attack, or destroying the opponent's back rows, or cards like Black Whirlwind that you don't want to deal with. 1 copy of Bryanak Dragon of the Ice Barrier, 1 copy of Goya Guardian, 1 copy of Arcanite Magician, 1 copy of X-Saber Herbellum, 1 copy of Black Rose Dragon, 1 copy of Thought Ruler Archfiend, 1 copy of Colossal Fighter, 1 copy of Stardust Dragon, 1 copy of Mistworm, quite easy to make in this deck seeing as you have plenty level 3 monsters, and then 1 copy of X-Saber Gothams. Gothams is one of the few synchro monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh that you can make with multiple tuners. So even if you have 2 tuner monsters like Airballoon, Fulham Knight, and the non-tuner, you can still make the Gothams, and 1 Chimeritic Fortress Dragon. For the side deck, 2 copies of DD Crow. This card comes in against a lot of the decks where they have activated abilities in the graveyard that you can crow away before they're able to activate them. So it does not stop cards like Sangan, of course, but you can utilize this card to remove Treeborn Frog, Misuki targets, or Destiny Hero Malicious. 2 copies of Cyber Dragon. So this deck is naturally very weak to cards like Deck Devastation Virus, seeing as you play quite a lot of low attack monsters that die to it. So against decks like Vayu or Blackwing that side in Deck Devastation Virus against you, I take out my Gravekeeper engine and put in 2 Cyber Dragon and 2 copies of Sirocco. Seeing as you play a lot of level 3 tuner monsters, these cards can allow you to make level 8 synchro plays, while also playing around Deck Devastation Virus thanks to their high attack stat. And Sirocco is very good against the Blackwing and Vayu deck, seeing as you can pump him up by using their attack strength and then just run over what they have. 1 copy of MST, 1 copy of Gravity Bind. So level limit is a bit better in the main deck, seeing as this card synergizes well with Fulham Knight, and it's also a spell card you can use when you go second. But Gravity Bind is a card I side in against the high level decks where they really want to try to rush you down. And since you have easy access to level 6 synchros, you can either Bryanak bounce it or pop it with Chunlei when you want to declare attacks. 1 copy of Trap Stun. This is yet another card that's very good with Chunlei, being able to Cold Wave essentially on their back row and then summon Chunlei and pop it all away, playing around cards like Starlight Road or Solemn Judgment by just negating them preemptively. I'm only playing 1 though, because people are quite aware of this combo with the X-Saber deck, so they tend not to set all of their back row at once to play around Chunlei. And there are other cards that serve a similar role in the X-Saber deck, seeing as you play Starlight Road and Solemn Judgment in the side deck. This card can negate anything that they use when you go for your push, or you can negate cards like Torrential Tribute with both of these before you get a chance to summon Hyunlei. And when I also have Dust Tornado as well as MST in the side deck, there's just too many cards that only deal with their back row and not enough cards that deal with their monsters. So I couldn't really justify playing more copies of Trap Stun when they all serve a similar purpose, and then the aforementioned Starlight Road and Solemn Judgment. Solemn is quite interesting in this deck, seeing as it's a recruiter deck, so you tend to ram your recruiters into their monsters, and it's quite a slow deck, so paying 4k early can cause you to lose. So this is not like Hero Beat where you present an unbeatable game state your opponent cannot push through because you have the Solemn. In this deck, you usually just grind your opponent down to few resources and then rip the remaining cards out of their hand with the Golem's Play or Airbellum. But there are some decks that I want Solemn against, where I don't mind paying 4k early, and the Road allows you to play quite aggressively into cards like Torrential Tribute or Mirror Force, which can be really good against decks like Blackwing, which also have Icarus attack. And then 2 copies of Dust Tornado, mainly to clear away Black Whirlwind, but you can also hit their back rows if you believe it's not a draw trap to allow for your Airbellum to push through. And then 2 copies of Pulling the Rug against Frog, Monarch, Diva variants. If you enjoy my content, make sure to also subscribe to my second channel, linked in the description box down below. There I'll be posting more personalized and exclusive content.